Alright, today we're going to be looking at plant tropisms and hormonal control. So this is chapter 14 of your textbook, and the questions that you have to do are just on the side here. Alright, so what hormones are? They are chemicals, and these chemicals are produced by the organism, by the cells that make it up, and they are then transported throughout the organisms to specific sites where they're needed, and there it affects these cells, and these cells respond to those messages. So hormones are chemical messages that are sent around the organism that then cause a response in different areas. So if we're looking at hormones in plants, which is what this chapter is all about, we're looking at hormones that affect roots and stems and leaf growth. We're looking at ones that affect the timing of flowers, which is for reproduction. We're looking at fruit ripening, seed germination, all of those different kinds of things. So a tropism is a plant's response to an external stimulus. So it's related to the direction from which this stimulus comes, and it's either going to be positive or negative. So you're either going to have a positive tropism or a negative tropism. So the tropism is the response to the direction of a stimulus. So a positive tropism is where it grows towards the stimulus, and the negative tropism is where it grows away from the stimulus. There are three specific plant hormones that we're going to be looking at that cause responses in plants. We're going to be looking at auxins, and these hormones stimulate plant growth, and they generally originate from the tip, which is the top of the plant. Gibberellins elongate the whole of the plant, so every single plant cell will be getting longer and bigger. Cytokinins stimulate stem and leaf growth, and they're associated with auxins, the first hormone that I talked about. We've also got inhibitors, and inhibitors are things that stop a response. So there we're looking at abscisic acid, which we also know as ABA, and then ethylene. So the first one we're going to look at is auxins, and these are the ones that are responsible for plant growth. So auxins cause a particular response, and these are called phototropisms. So the first phototropism that we're going to look at is the direction of light. So photo as a prefix stands for light. So in this case, wherever the direction of the light is, the auxin wants to move away from it. So if the light in this picture down the bottom comes from the right hand side, the auxin is going to move to the left of the plant, causing more cell growth along the left, and then the plant's going to bend towards the right, towards the light. Okay, so there's going to cause more growth on one side than on the other, so the plant is going to bend. So this is the phototropism for the direction of light. The other phototropism that we have is for sensing light and sensing different colors of light. So blue light causes that phototropism that we spoke of before, which was growing towards the light. We have orange-red light, which is for the germination of seeds, the growth of leaves, seed dormancy, all that kind of stuff. And then far red light reverses what I just said. So instead of seeds germinating, they might be becoming dormant. Instead of leaves growing, they might be dropping off. The next tropism that we're going to look at is geotropism, and this is the response to gravity. So in a geotropism, there is both a positive tropism and a negative tropism. So the auxin, that growth hormone, causes the stem to grow away from gravity, which causes it to grow up, while the roots down the bottom here respond to gravity and they go down. So they're a positive tropism. So the shoots are a negative tropism, growing the opposite direction to gravity, where the roots are a positive tropism, growing in the direction of gravity. Another response from auxin is apical dominance, and apex is just the top of something. So the auxin in the plant is produced at that tip, so at that very top of the plant. And then the auxin moves down the stem and stops the growth of side shoots. So it moves down the plant and stops these side growths from happening. So the further up that it is, it's able to stop things that are closer, and then there's less of the hormone down the bottom. And this is called apical dominance. So this is for those taller plants that have very few side branches. The next hormone that we talked about was gibberellins, and these ones here promote cell elongation of the whole plant, not just the tip. So what they do is they promote cell division, the flowering of plants, fruit enlargement, and seed germination. So gibberellins are made in flowers, developing fruits and seeds, growing buds, and the growing plant itself. So anywhere that plant is growing, it's going to have gibberellins. Cytokinins work together with auxin. So they stimulate cell division and the differentiation in plants. So if something's a leaf or a stem versus being the body of the plant. So the stems and the leaves develop where there is more cytokinin than auxin, and the roots develop where there's more auxin than cytokinin. So it's a balance between these two hormones. If you have more of the cytokinin, then you're going to get stems and leaves, whereas if you have more auxin, you're going to get roots growing, or the actual body of the plant. We also talked about those growth inhibiting hormones. So plants are able to tolerate a certain amount of their fluctuating conditions. So having these inhibiting hormones helps them to avoid being in bad conditions. So it helps them avoid drought, salinity, which is salt, low temperatures. And what it does in response to these is it helps the plant to drop its leaves. It helps it to go into bud and seed dormancy. So when it puts its seeds away, if the conditions aren't right for that plant to grow, it increases the plant's resistance to frost when it's extremely cold. And the ones that we're looking at here are the abscisic acid and the ethylene that we talked about before. So the first one is the ABA, the abscisic acid, and this is made in chloroplasts. And what the ABA does is it causes the dropping of fruit and unfertilized flowers, and it makes leaves fall off the plant. And this process is known as abscission. What it does is it can also carry messages to the guard cells, remembering those are the ones around the stomata, forcing them to close. And you generally have this more when you're in high stress environments, so the abscisic acid level will increase when the environment isn't as conducive as it was towards that plant's survival. So ethylene, this is a gas, and we also know it as ethene, and it's released by fruits that are ripening. So apples, pears, citruses, all these fruits release this gas as they are ripening. And what the gas does is it increases the rate of cellular respiration. So if you remember back to our cellular respiration, this isn't photosynthesis. This is the plant's process of using energy within itself, of releasing the energy that it has made through photosynthesis. So it is creating carbon dioxide gas and those types of things. So it increases the rate of cellular respiration, it increases the amount of energy, so therefore it's increasing the growth and ripening rate of these plants. So that's the role of ethene. That's why some fruits you might notice are ripe and good for you to eat for only a couple of days, where some of them can take a lot longer. And you might have heard of putting a ripe banana with some of your unripened apples or avocados to help them speed up that process. It's because of this ethene gas that these fruits produce. So it's what it is triggered by is auxin. Remember, this was that growth hormone, and the ABA, the abscisic acid, because what this acid is doing is it's trying to remove any issues. So this fruit, while this fruit might be good now, it's not going to be good forever. So this abscisic acid is starting to prepare to remove the fruit from the plant. I would suggest that you pause the video now and that you look at copying this table into your workbook. It has all of the hormones on the left here, where in the plant they are produced or where they are made in the plant, the effective site, so this is where that hormone has its effect, the action, so what is the actual effect of that hormone, what is the physical effect to the cells, and then what happens, what are you able to see as a result of that hormone. So if we look at auxins, it's in the shoot tip, so it's in the top part of that plant, it's in the growing region of a shoot. That's its effective site, and it elongates cells under turgor pressure. Remember, that's that water pressure, turgor, water pressure. It causes the plants to bend towards the light. It causes apical dominance. It's used for herbicides and can stimulate the cuttings of a root. So if you were to cut a plant and then want to replant it, you would need to add some auxin. So I would suggest you copy this into your book. Okay, plants don't have specialized receptors. These plants rely on the stimuli, and these stimuli create hormones within the plant, and these hormones travel throughout and then cause their response. So some of the stimuli which can trigger the release of hormones are physical stimuli, so the direction or the color, wavelength of the light, day or night, so the length of the light, gravity, temperature, and touch. And then there are the chemical stimuli, water, CO2, other gases. Photoperiod is light period. You need to remember photo means light, so it's the period of the length of light. And it's kind of a misconception because we're talking about short day and long day, but it's not actually the amount of daylight that affects these plants. It's actually the amount of darkness that affects these plants. So short day plants have a longer amount of night time. So they require long nights. And what this does is it triggers the plants to flower. Long day plants only require nights that are short. So they need a lot more daylight than they need darkness. And then these plants will trigger their flowering then. Natural plants don't really mind if it's short day or long day. So down the bottom here we have some examples of long day, short day, and then neutral plants. And what this just means is you might have noticed if you've been to the gardens or anything like that, that you don't always have all of your flowers at once and then that's it. You don't have any anymore. Flowers are blooming at different times depending on the seasons, and different seasons give us different amounts of daylight and darkness. So different plants will grow at different times and flower at different times depending on the length of the day. Okay, we talked about the geotropism before, which is the response to gravity, and we also talked about shoots growing away from gravity, and then that's the negative, and we also talked about roots being positive as they grow towards gravity. So amyloplasts within the root cells, they move according to gravity. So gravity is pushing down on all three of these pictures from the top. And then what we've got here is this one on the left has been tilted onto its right hand side. So then you've got your amyloplasts as these little circles. So these circles are now inside here because it's been tilted to the side. And these amyloplasts will move, as it says up here, they're going to move as a response to that. So they're going to want to sit up the top here, which is what you get in the final picture. So those amyloplasts have moved so that they're sitting in a position for that plant to then grow in those directions. So the plant would have been growing vertically, it's been tilted onto its side, and then the plant would then grow in that opposite direction. Thigmotropism, this is a response to contact or touch with a surface. So things like pea plants, grapevines, all of those things, anytime they come in contact with an object, they release their little tendrils and they hook on and grab around the object. So these little fine green strands that you can see around the metal barb, that is the tendrils that it's released. Well, not released, grown. We're going to look at some movements and plant rhythms. So we're going to be looking at sleep movement, solar tracking, and nodding and contraction movements. So sleep movements, this is when the flower petals close, so they fold up and the leaves fold up. The example for this one is a water lily, and this happens due to the turgor, that internal fluid pressure, the fluid being water. These sleep cycles are known as circadian rhythms. So we also follow circadian rhythms. You might have noticed that even when it's on school holidays, sometimes you'll wake up at the time that you would have woken up to go to school, or when you go back to school you want to be back on your holiday timeline that you set yourself, and this is because we also follow these circadian rhythms. So that's what sleep cycles are known as. Solar tracking, this is when plants twist themselves to follow the sunlight. And the example that we have for that one is the sunflowers. The sunflowers twist their bodies, so their stems, so that they're able to follow the sun as it goes across the sky. Nodding movements, so as a pea shoot is growing, it nods from side to side. And during seed germination, it releases that ethylene gas, and it then results in the thickening and the bending of these shoots here. So the nodding movement is just its response to it growing, so it looks like it's nodding up and down. Contraction movements, so these are for things like lilies and bulbs. They suck their roots in. So to contract, contractile, we can break that down to contract, and what it is doing is it's pulling those roots back into the bulb. So temperature changes, temperature fluctuations at the soil surface are what stimulate these roots being pulled back into the bulb. So the bulb is the big white bit, and then the roots are below it, and the changes in those temperatures cause the roots to be pulled back up into the white bulb. Rapid responses are quick responses, and these are very few in the plant kingdom. The example that we have for this one is a Venus flytrap, and it rapidly responds to touch, so it's a thigmotropism that plant has. The last thing that we need to talk about is temperatures and how temperature can affect plants. So we're looking at 0 to 5 degrees Celsius where the plants are able to live but they're not able to grow. 28 to 35, which is the plant's optimal temperature range. 45 to 53, in which the plants won't be able to survive. So depending on these temperatures, plants have different responses to them. So we look at seed dormancy. So the seeds remain dormant. In other words, they're not able to grow until the conditions are right for that particular seed. So some of them need some cold months, so they require their environment to be cooler before the plant will grow. Some of them require a lot of water, so the seeds for that plant will remain dormant until you get, say, flooding, if you're looking at desert areas where they get a lot of rain in a short amount of time. Or here in Australia, a lot of our Australian natives rely on fire, so bushfires are actually what stimulate the seeds to open and then grow these new plants. The last one that we need to look at is vernalization, and this is the period of cold winter months that stimulate flowering. So snow gums, for example, these plants require it to be very, very cold for those snow gums to open. So what we're going to be doing now is you need to be looking at those chapter questions, and we're going to be looking at designing an experiment around these tropisms.